there's no such thing as after hours. There's opportunities. And if you're not willing to take that opportunity at any time of the day or night, someone else is going to take that opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the reality. That's how you build wealth long term. And there comes a point in your plan where you may not have to be as aggressive and say, you know what, I don't need any more opportunities. You can let the opportunities pass. But for you to get to that point, you have to be willing to take calls, I think, at any hour of the day.
Yes, I agree.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Money Podcast. We're your hosts, Gino and Michael Barbaro, co-founders of Barbaro 360. And on today's episode, we're going to be discussing where we disagree with Dave Ramsey's philosophy on money and financing. Now, my son, Michael, is a Dave Ramsey financial coach, but he's also gone to the school of Barbaro investing as well. So, Michael, kick it off for us, brother.
Let's do it. I'll tell you right now, I've done the school of Barbaro investing significantly longer than Dave Ramsey's school. 23 years to be exact.
So when did you start the Barbaro? When did it actually seep into your veins? Like what Dad was talking about money. When was that first enlightened realization?
8 years old, because that's when I started working at the restaurant. You remember?
Oh,
I'd go in there once a week and make $10 for the whole day, and then I'd eat for 2 hours of the whole day.
Well, that word work is being used liberally because I remember
exactly.
You'd go in there, and I remember those days. They were awesome. Wednesday night, you'd come in at 4, and by 6 o'clock, we'd have baked clams on the table. We'd have the focaccia. Our cousin Ramo would come over and sit down, and it was incredible. But it also taught you that the social skills, the work ethic. You were there. You're 8 years old. You're hanging out with adults. You're sitting people. You're cleaning off tables. You're working with grandma. It was an incredible experience, wasn't it?
No, it was. It was great, too, because, again, we had a cool structure where it was when I was 10 or 11 years old. I would go in on a Wednesday. Every other week, I would work the whole day. And the other, from 4 to 9, whatever it was, right? And at 10. And then the other week, the other Wednesday, Raymond would come over, and we would have, lunch for dinner for 3 hours.
That's awesome.
It was literally 3 hours, too. Baked clams, chicken parmigiano, all the other stuff. And, I worked about an hour.
So let's talk about that evolution. From 8 years old, you're 23 right now. You've learned a lot of stuff in the last 15 years, watching me, going through the Barbaro School of Investing. Let's touch specifically on Dave Ramsey. I remember telling you that I love just learning about Dave Ramsey and creating that financial foundation. Now, I don't want to go and criticize everything that Dave Ramsey does. In my opinion, he does a lot of really good stuff.
Yes.
For getting people off the ground, for getting people who have no financial intelligence whatsoever, a place to start. Because as I always say to you, your language becomes your experience. If you start learning the language of money, even rudimentary through Dave Ramsey, what cash flow is, what a business is, what debt is, what equity is, what credit cards are. These are a lot of things that people never hear or never talk about. So at least that's a great foundation, a great starting point for people. So where do you see some of the places that we agree from the Barbaro School of Investing versus the Dave Ramsey School of Investing?
So like you said, I like how we both talk about the basic financials of just life, right? What a credit card is, what a debit card is, what a bank account is, all of these things are good and everyone needs to know them. The interesting thing though is, Dave Ramsey's obviously radically against debt. Which makes sense, right? He came from when he was 24, 25 into real estate, and he'll tell you he was doing deals 100% down financing, right? And he
with
got
no money, 100% seller financing,
exactly,
yes.
Yes.
Which is very dangerous,
yes,
especially if you don't know what you're doing. Listen, we've done over $30 million in seller finance deals. They are very lucrative. They are incredibly amazing if you know what you're doing.
Yes.
If you don't, that's probably where you shouldn't start when you're starting in real estate investing.
Yes. So what happened is with 100% seller financing, the banks, I believe, called back all of his loans. So when you're 25 years old and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt that come back to you, what do? He declared bankruptcy, and he decided that that's not for me, right?
Yes. And when you make that realization that that's not for me, I would take it a step further. When you have that realization or you have that experience, that doesn't mean the experience a couple of years later has to be the same result. If you're an investor, you learn from the experience. And I can give you an example for myself. My first couple of real estate ventures were not really that good, Michael. They just weren't. If I had quit and said, well, real estate's not for me, what I ended up doing is I ended up figuring out, well, what happened? What was the mistake that I made? with the real estate, and I learned, touch specifically on debt and credit cards and all that, because I think that's one place where we completely just are misaligned with what his messaging is there.
So credit card and debit card, a lot of times it comes down to the term other people's money, which I think is interesting because at the end of the day, when I hear other people's money, I think financing apartment complexes, commercial real estate for millions of dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't normally think of having a $5,000 credit limit as leveraging other people's money because you're going to pay that off sooner or later, right?
Yes.
And so people's argument for having credit cards now is because they like cash back, they like travel benefits, and they like all this other kind of rewards options, as you can call it, right? And go ahead.
No, I was going to say I agree with that. The problem with credit cards is, in and of itself, if you don't pay them off every month, they are become a financial
they're
burden.
Criminal. Who in their right mind charges 24% for something? You know what I mean?
And then get away with it.
They get away with it.
Yes.
And it's not just Amex or it's everyone.
Yes. Yes. And that's the problem with what we have with higher interest rates right now.
Yeah.
Interest rates are higher. All of a sudden, they're going to pay a higher interest rate on their credit. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, cut out your credit cards. And Michael, what I'm saying is find out with your relationship with money why you keep going down that rabbit hole of spending more than paying it off. His solution is to cut up the credit card. And I guess that's a short-term solution. But in my opinion, that leads to a life of scarcity. That leads to a life of anxiety. That leads to a life of fear because you may see something and you have that urge, that rush, that dopamine hit that says, I want to buy that thing. But then you don't have the ability to pay for it. You're going to lead a conflicted, emotion-filled life around money, and you're not understanding why you're having these emotions. So I say maybe short-term to cut up the credit cards, but longer-term, we are money coaches. If people are looking for that advice and wanting to find out what their relationship with money, what their beliefs and what their patterns are with money, now's a great time to start doing that. And I think the Band-Aid is putting it on and cutting up the credit cards. Band-Aids are only a temporary, solution to a permanent problem.
Yes. So like you said, cutting up the credit cards, it's interesting because I remember hearing one of the Ramsey shows, somebody called in about going through the whole process. And the question she asked Dave was, I want to borrow money for this. Okay. And he's like, did you not go through my program and see what we teach here? She almost didn't know what to say. Right.
Yes.
So you think about it and you think, okay, so the core problem with this lady was not resolved.
Yes.
Which is why you're borrowing money in the first place. Okay.
Yes.
And how are you using that in a way that's making your life better or even worse, for that matter, right?
I'm going to put you on the spot right now. I'm going to ask you, what did the Barbaro School of Investing, aka Pops, teach you about credit, debt, credit cards? What was our, mantra or our philosophy on debt?
So again, good debt and bad debt.
Good debt and bad debt.
One of the core fundamentals of. Are you writing it down now?
I am, because I'm going to ask you questions on what good debt is and what bad debt is.
Okay.
So people can understand how we differ and how we differentiate ourselves from Ramsey's philosophy. And it's important because, continue with good debt versus bad debt.
So I'm going to say this right now. One of the main things about debt that people do forget is you take on substantially more risk. Right. And so it's that risk reward thing that everyone talks about. I learned that this is finance 101 throughout my entire 4 years of college. The more risk you're going to have, the more return you're going to make. It's just how it works. Right. And so if you're going to take on debt, of course, you're going to make more money. The IRR and the cash on cash, all these numbers look better with debt. If you're okay taking on more risk, okay, that's fine. If you're not okay, that's where we need to talk about. Right. So for what reason are you not okay with this? And if you're not okay with it, then don't take on debt. That's all it comes down to, right? And so we talk about good debt. As you said before, real estate is one of the big ones. And this day and age, it's pretty difficult to buy any real estate without any kind of loan. Even Dave Ramsey would tell you take out a loan for your house with restrictions. He's got a whole parameter that I can't remember exactly. It's your paycheck, like a lot of people do underwriting and whatnot. And so that would be an example of good debt, right?
Yes.
If you're going to buy a 50-unit apartment complex, you're probably going to take out a loan. Unless you've been stacking it up for 30 years. So Ramsey's philosophy basically is you buy something in cash, you wait 3 or 5 years, and then you buy another thing in cash, and you keep going forward. It's difficult to scale that quickly, right?
It's difficult to scale at all because your cash loses value. If you had saved cash back from 2020 and you've got that cash today from 5 years ago, that cash is worth significantly less. That's why if you had taken a loan out 5 years ago, that loan today has depreciated. So you're paying back a dollar of what it was 5 years ago, significantly with cheaper dollars today. That's why the debt and the leverage is important to understand. I'm going to make one caveat, and we're going to mention this again because I think it's important. If you're going to take on debt, you need to understand investing and you need to take risk, because leverage, like you said it, and I'll really want to amplify this message. Leverage works in both ways. If you're doing really well, leverage can really amplify the upside. If you're doing really bad, Michael, leverage can really amplify the downside as well. So good debt, you said real estate. Well, another thing for good debt, what about business? A business is a good way to take on debt if you're borrowing a business.
Yes.
Now, bad debt, what would you consider bad debt?
Well, bad debt is anything, for example, let's say you're spending more on your credit card. Let's go with this. You're spending more on your credit card than you're making. And so you're digging yourself into this hole continuously of you're making $5,000 a month, but you're spending $7,500 a month in credit cards. That's an example of bad debt because you're spending more than you make.
I agree. Can I add a couple onto there as well? Bad debt is anything that will depreciates. Like bad debt would be buying a car and buying a car that is
on a car payment.
On a car payment that is, we were just talking about it. Why would you buy a car that has an $800 a month car payment when you either try to buy the car in cash or possibly buy a car that's a lot less expensive, especially when you're first starting out? You know, use that additional money to go out and buy something else. So understanding that, and it's also bad debt because a car, although it's an asset, it's a depreciating asset.
Yeah.
So you're paying debt on an asset that's actually losing money.
Yes.
Whereas with real estate, you're buying real estate and you're taking on debt over the long term, not in the cyclical market 2-3 years, but over the long term, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, that asset is appreciating while your debt is getting cheaper because it's deflating. You're paying with cheaper dollars. I mean, think about that. That's the power of using positive leverage and having a plan. And there's one other stipulation that I think we should make between good debt and bad debt. There's also debt that's for your personal life and debt that's for your business life. Exactly. And those are two different distinctions that you need to make. If you're using debt wisely for your business and for your real estate and for your investments, that's one part. We use our business debt to be able to lever and to be able to pay for our personal lifestyle. We're taking debt on these apartment complexes that are cash flowing and that are paying money, and then we're using it for our personal lifestyle. That's the other distinction that I think we need to make. Instead of saying getting rid of all debt is all bad, I think understanding the difference and learning how to utilize debt as a tool is what we're trying to discuss here.
And so the top 1%, the way they do it with debt is people are always like, how do they use the word avoid. I mean, like it's all legal what they do essentially, right? But what they're doing is they have, for example, $1 billion worth of stock. Elon Musk has $1 billion worth of Tesla stock, and he borrows against that to pay for his personal life.
Yes.
So if he wants to buy 3 houses with that, he can, because it's not, number one, it's not income. So you're not getting taxed on it like income. And also, like, you know, if you have an investment that's paying for that via arbitrage, right? The stock's going up 12% or something going up 12% and he's paying 6% on the debt. There's a 6% difference there that he's keeping.
Yes.
That's the way these guys do it, right?
So that would be the Barbaro School of Investing.
Essentially, yeah.
You're graduating to something that's a little bit higher. But I think, like you said, we need to start at least the foundation with the Ramsey School and understand the words, understand the language of investing. Anything else that you think we disagree on, like any other big topics that we really disagree on with Ramsey versus our philosophy?
So I mentioned to you this earlier too, actually, in the house. And when he did his study of the millionaires, remember he did a study of, was it 10,000 millionaires, whatever it was? And he studied what they did to become millionaires. In my head, I'm thinking these guys were all business owners. These guys all had crazy, you know, real estate deals and whatnot. Most of them were 9-to-5 workers who worked a good job, okay, contributions, etc. Now, when I hear millionaire, and this is not to drag on anyone who does this, because this is a good fundamental thing we need to have, right? People, when I think millionaire, I think people who ran their own businesses. I think people who own real estate and essentially not just that simple traditional 9-to-5 job, right? And so we need to understand there's 2 different definitions of millionaires, right? Because in my head, I thought big businesses, I thought all this corporation kind of stuff. But in reality, it's just you own a house, you have a 401k, and you can get to a millionaire that way. You can. But if you want to be a multimillionaire, you're going to need to do a lot more than that, right?
Would you say then everyone should define millionaire for what
Absolutely.
they think millionaire is? And then should you also say that a person listening to this should also define what their goals are?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with going down the route that you said. To me, it wasn't alluring. I didn't want to wait till I was 65 years old to have this money saved up.
Yeah.
That I'm afraid that I've saved this money up. Now, am I supposed to take it? Am I supposed to take 4% of the principal and live on 4%? Remember, there's scarcity, there's fear. I want to have that kind of lifestyle. Absolutely not. Did I want you guys to have that kind of lifestyle? No. And I think the last generation was conditioned to do that. They could have a 9-to-5 job. They could make enough money. They could save enough money for retirement and to be able to do that. This generation, your generation, is questioning that. And I'm so glad that they are, because you don't have to do what your parents did. You can create your own plan. You can lay under your own financial foundation and decide what you want to do. So for you, what does a millionaire look like to you?
So a millionaire, again, I want to emphasize that it's not bad to have the 9-to-5, but understanding that if we're going to keep going that route and wondering why these other CEOs and other business owners are making millions of dollars a year, it's because they're willing to do what no one else is willing to do, which is work outside of that 9-to-5. I know you've taken business calls on vacation. I know I've had to do that as well. I take calls after hours a lot, and it's difficult, but 95 to 99% of people do not want to do that. And so there's a reason why people get to be wealthy is because they're willing to do what no one else is willing to do. Okay. I actually forgot what your original question was. I want my.
You got a little riled up there.
I really did.
And it's actually interesting. There's no such thing as after-hour calls. It's just
calls. It doesn't exist.
There's no hours.
No, I know.
Right? We're going to Deerfield this weekend. We're going on vacation. I'm going to do a podcast Friday morning.
Yeah.
I'm taking mom, dragging mom to come to Miami with me, and it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's considered work.
Yeah.
I've got somebody calling me over the weekend to go over and discuss a deal. There's no such thing as after hours. There's opportunities. And if you're not willing to take that opportunity at any time of the day or night, someone else is going to take that opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the reality. That's how you build wealth long term. And there comes a point in your plan where you may not have to be as aggressive and say, you know what? I don't need any more opportunities. You can let the opportunities pass. But for you to get to that point, you have to be willing to take calls, I think, at any hour of the day.
Yes, I agree. And that's interesting, right? People are not willing to do these things, and yet they're wondering why they're not making all this money and all this stuff. And so I want to challenge people. I want to say, what are you willing to do this week that you're normally not willing to do, right? Are you willing to get on a call at 6:30 p.m.? Are you willing to stay a little extra longer at work, right? What are these things we can do to break free of that mindset, right?
What about, are you willing to pick up a copy of Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy? Just email me, gino@jakeandgino.com, or go to Barbaro 360 and download a free copy. I love what you said. It's challenging the status quo. That's how we got out of our situation. I just got finally, ultimately annoyed and pissed off at my status quo and where I was. And I needed to start with the education. I needed to start putting other things into my mind, these positive messages, whether it's Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins, or hopefully now it's Barbaro 360, where we can share these powerful messages and say, hey, Dave Ramsey's great. Barbaro 360 is great. Take a little bit out of what each one serves you. I think that's what's important.
No, I agree. And yeah, even with that, I want to talk about, doing what's best for you, because ultimately everything we do has a risk, right? If you take out money, there's a risk. I was talking to a guy recently who had a great job at a corporation, and he was talking about job security and all this stuff. And then his next statement was, and then I lost my job. And I'm like, so there's a risk there with even having a job. Is it a good fit for you? Is it a good fit for them? Do I like the work? Is my boss an idiot? All this different stuff, right? So there's absolutely a risk with that. And even business, even if you start a business and you take no debt on, like every business has a risk, right? And there's statistics to show that a lot of businesses fail due to obviously different reasons, right? It could be debt, right? That's one of the big things. And also could be poor management, not understanding your businesses, right? So how do we manage that? Go ahead.
Michael, before we sign off, I want to share a story with you. I don't know if I ever really shared this with you and the emotions around it, but what you said just, I don't want to say struck a chord with me, but it was actually very interesting. When we opened the restaurant in 1994, I never even thought about going out of business or losing money. We were always successful. We were always profitable, even during the Great Recession of 2008. But my mother was always telling me, we're okay. You've got a little business. You'll make enough money. And I always knew in the back of my mind, there's risk. There's enough, but there's risk in this business as well. And when I left in 2016, the business was okay, But what happened in 2020? COVID. And COVID shut down everything in New York. And my family had worked for 20 plus years. And in a blink of an eye, the restaurant is closed and we could have lost everything. So you made a great point. Whatever you do in life, there's going to be risk. I just want to be able to be in control of that risk. I want to be able to own assets that have some debt on there, that cash flow, and continue to grow that wealth and not just be, beholden to a single job or a single paycheck or a single stream of revenue. If I wasn't prepared, closing in 2020 with 6 kids and a restaurant that's closed because of COVID, things would have been a lot different than they are today.
I agree. And you guys sold like a month before COVID too. It was February 2020.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting how sometimes God closes doors and opens doors. I think it was just very fortunate that we ended up literally closing February 27th of 2020, and March 15th, 2 weeks later, everything shut down.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of uncertainty, and we were just really fortunate and blessed to have been able to build up a real estate portfolio that sustained us during COVID.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. Yeah. Any other final comments?
No, for me, I'm so glad that we had this conversation. In the next couple of shows, we're going to be discussing what we do like about Dave Ramsey, because I don't want to come off as just bashing his system. I think he's got some great points in his system. I want to share those as well. But I love what you talked about. I love the credit. I love the debt. I love the ability to just take a step back and figure out, millionaire, what does a millionaire look like to me? What do I want my life to look like? How am I going to use these tools that we're teaching to be able to amplify what my life looks like?
That's great.
Thanks for tuning in to the Happy Money Podcast. We're your hosts, Michael and Gino Barbaro, and we'll see you on next week's episode.